Alright, before we step into section 3.4, let's look back and see what we have gone through. Okay? At the beginning of this chapter, we start with the aggregate supply for the goods and services. Okay? And we introduced several assumptions, and eventually we said that every factor of production is fixed, including capital, labor, land, and technology. Okay, and using that kind of the oversimplified assumptions, so we figure out the total amount of goods and services the firms are supposed to produce, and then the firms will go to the market for factors of production and decide how many units of each factor they want to use. Okay, and then so that's going to be an aggregate demand for factors of production. And because all of the factors of production are supposed to be occupied or held by the households, okay, and so once the firms decide how many units of each factor they want to use, then households would know how much income they would be able to make, okay, by providing these factors of production. And then we talk about the income distribution between the workers and capital owners. Okay, and in the third section of this chapter, we come back to the market for goods and services. We said that once households figure out how much they make, they would be able to decide how much they can spend on goods and services. Okay, so that's going to be that was the discussion about the aggregate demand for goods and services. Okay. Alright, so in this next section, what we will do is finally we can put the supply and demand for goods and services together and talk about the how does the market reach its equilibrium. Okay, how this market or the markets for goods and services are clear. Alright, so that's what we're going to do in this video. Okay, now before we talk about the equilibrium on these markets, and let's see what we already knew at this moment. Okay, first we said that aggregate demand for goods and services equals consumption plus investment plus government spending or government purchases, right? Remember, we don't have the net exports here because we used the assumption, which is the closed economy, to get rid of the exports and imports. Okay, of course you can add that back to this equation. It won't change the conclusion we're going to draw. Okay, and then on the supply side, we said that how much the goods and services would be produced depends upon the production function of the whole economy. Okay, so here F stands for the production function, and K is a capital, L is a labor. Okay, we said that we actually have the technology here built into this function, but it's not visible because there's no letter or no variable that's specifically representing technology. So technology would be the function itself. Okay. All right. When the market is clear, when it reaches its equilibrium, we said that the aggregate demand for goods and services equals aggregate supply. Right. That's just what we call the equilibrium condition. Right. So here we just plug in C plus I plus G to the left hand side, and then the production function to the right hand side. That's what we got here. Okay, now to have a deeper understanding of this equation, we need to figure out which one or ones is or are the variables here. Okay, I would strongly encourage you to pause the video and think about, what are the variables in this equation? What are the constants? Okay. All right. Here, let's talk about it. Okay. If you remember, previously we said that consumption is a function of disposable income and real interest rate, if included. Okay. We also said that the investment is a function of the real interest rate. When we talk about the government spending in the previous section, we said that how much government spent and the tax revenue it collects from the private sector. In other words, T. So G and T are both determined by Capitol Hill, okay, by the Congress. So it's not really, dependent upon other economic variables. Okay, you could argue that when our politicians or lawmakers figure out how much to spend and how much to collect, they do look at our GDP, for example, our income, right? But again, that's not directly dependent upon this. Okay, it's more about the political decision. All right. And on the right hand side, we still keep these assumptions we made before. So capital and labor are fixed, and even the production function itself is fixed. That's why we put these overhead bars, okay, to remind ourselves that these are constants. Okay, K bar, L bar are constants. Okay, and G and here T are also constants. Okay, Y at the equilibrium would be equal to this. Okay, would be equal to the right hand side, the aggregate supply, and because capital, labor, and technologies are all fixed, so of course Y is a constant. Okay, so let's plug this in here. All right. Okay, here I guess it's crystal clear that everything is constant, is a constant except for R, which is the real interest rate. Okay, in other words, we're saying here, the real interest rate clears the market for goods and services. It moves ups and downs to make sure the aggregate demand for goods and services equals aggregate supply. Alright, so the key here is the real interest rate. Okay, that's the most important variable here. Okay, that helps our economy, both the markets for goods and services and the markets for factors, to reach their equilibrium. Alright, so in the next video, we're gonna use a slightly different way by focusing on the financial market to talk about the role of real interest rate. Okay, now here what we focus on is the market for goods and services, right? We still look at the real economy, but on the next video we're going to take a quick look at the financial market, okay, and see if we're going to reach the same conclusion. Okay.